Co złego to nie Robert, pamiętajcie. Tym samym chciałbym na scenę poprosić Dana Dill, Development Manager z Huuuge Games, który opowie nam, jak zdobyć wymarzoną pracę. Rozpoczynamy trochę game devowo, aczkolwiek dzisiaj będzie kilka takich tematów związanych z game devem. I pierwszy jest Dana Dill. Proszę bardzo.
Dzień dobry. I know a little bit more Polish, but that's about all I'm going to say today on Polish. So, all right, I think we're all set. Well, I want to thank Pixel Heaven for allowing me to be here and Huuuge Games. This is really quite an honor for me, and I'm super excited to talk about your dream job today. And in the next few moments, we're going to go over that, and again, I'll look forward to it. Next slide, please. Mark Twain had a famous quote, and you've probably seen this before: if you love what you do, you'll never work another day of your life. And that's a very simple but very practical, and always something I've always kept in mind in all my journey of employment. So, what are we going to talk about today? Next slide, please. Sorry. All right, today we're going to talk about how to get your dream job. We're going to talk about some common sense tips on things that you can do to get your dream job. And then I'm going to give you a step-by-step example of how I got my dream job, and it applies some of those tips, things that I talk about. I'd like to hopefully take away from this message is that some tools and practical examples, the desire and the passion to go out there and find your dream job, and the courage to act upon all these things that we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. So who am I? I'm Dana Dill, Development Manager for Huuuge Games, as was already said. I have lived here in Warszawa for 7 years. I am from the Boston area, more specifically a little bitty town called from Wilton, Maine. And I came here 7 years ago. I fell in love and got on a plane. I sold all my house and my cars and everything I owned in the U.S., put everything in one red suitcase and got on a plane in Chicago and showed up. And that was 7 years ago. I love being in this city. I think the city is fantastic. I love being in the country. I've been able to travel all around Poland and meet some amazing people. And I'm extremely happy to be here. And I'm planning on being here for the rest of my life, to be honest with you. Next slide. All right, Huuuge Games. What is Huuuge Games? Huuuge Games is a mobile game company and publisher. The types of games that we work on and we publish are social casino games, casual games, puzzle games, and action games. Huuuge has over 600 employees worldwide. We have 3 offices here in Poland, including our office here in Warszawa. We also have offices in Tel Aviv, Amsterdam, Vegas, London, and some other places around the world. So we get a very diverse culture. Some of our more famous games that I would encourage you to check out at our booth or download on your mobile device are Traffic Puzzle, Huuuge Games Casino, and Billionaire Casino, and Rogueland. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about your dream job, and let's get you started on that journey so you can be happy every day. 5 steps I'm going to show you to how to get your dream job. Next slide, please. Step number 1, identify what your dream job is. And that may sound pretty obvious, but I don't know about you. It took me many years to figure out exactly what my dream job was, the things that I enjoy doing. And as part of that finding out, there's some questions that you can ask yourself. And the first one you could ask is, well, how much money do you want to make? Another one is, what kind of responsibilities do you want to have at your job? What kind of things would you like to do? Do you want to work at a remote office, or do you want to work at a regular office, or do you want to do both in today's day and age? What kind of environment do you want to work in? Do you want an environment that's very dynamic, very action-packed, or do you maybe things changing every day, or do you want to work in an environment that's very stable? The things are pretty stable, same every day, but you get a lot done. What part of the world would you like to work in? I mean, here I'm in Warsaw, and I love it. But maybe there's someplace else in the world that you would like to have your job. Maybe, well, that would be up to you. How big of a company would you like to work for? Would you like to work for a major corporation, or would you like to work for a middle-sized company, or maybe a startup or something that's small like that? And this sounds a little bit odd, but it's actually very important, is what would your perfect boss be like? And I say that because I've had many jobs over the last 20 years, and I've had some bosses that are fantastic, have elevated my career, have pushed me to the next level, and I've had bosses who have just absolutely destroyed my morale and my enthusiasm, and actually stepped me back a few. So when I was looking for my perfect job, I actually had a real clear definition of what boss that I wanted, and in many cases, that was a deciding factor of where I went, which was huge. Okay, the second step, very important. Update your CV, and I'm going to get that into the next slide, exactly more details about that. You want to apply for positions that are advertised out there. That's pretty obvious. When you go look on your job websites and things like that, you want to make sure that you're applying for those. You also want to send your CVs to companies that you're interested in, but they may not have a job that would be your dream job at that particular moment. You want to make that contact. In many cases, if you go on their job employment sites, they'll say, you've seen it before probably, if you don't have a job that fits you, send us your resume or your CV, and to get in their database, and that's very important. Network. Everybody has a network of friends, professionals that they know over the years, and this is actually a really key source of getting your dream job, because you gravitate towards the people that you have common interests in, and many times you network with people that were either in your dream job or are in that field. Use LinkedIn. LinkedIn was for me personally, and we'll get that into a bit in a second, was a big source for me in getting my dream job, and so you make sure you want to use LinkedIn. Talk to somebody who's already been in the position before you. So you may have a friend, again, that you've networked with, that they may be in that position. So talk to them. Ask them about, well, what are the requirements for being in this position? What's it like? What's it like? Is it maybe you have to redefine your dream job a little bit based upon what information you find out. Let's see. Yeah, how big of a company? Again, I mentioned before, is really important. What products do you want to be associated with? Do you want to be with a, kind of a self-explanatory, but do you want to be with a product that's well-known, has a certain reputation, or do you want to help raise a product, and things like that? So how you're kind of branded and tagged is very important. And probably the most important thing is you really need to start changing your thinking about getting a job and getting that dream job. It's an incredibly difficult process, and you got to be really mentally with a positive attitude, and I'll get into that in a moment as well. Next slide, please. Okay, your CV. Let's talk about your CV a little bit. Your CV is an organic document, as I like to call it. It's a living, breathing thing. When I first got looking for a job, I made my CV. It was pretty dry, long, not very attractive, and I thought that was it. And I just sent it out to people, and I got no answers. But in reality, your CV, every job position, every description is a little bit different. And you have different skill sets, and you should organize and actually customize that CV for that specific job. One thing you can do as you work on your CV that you can see, well, is this the right job, is you can take your CV and take a job description that you're interested in, put them side by side, and ask yourself a few questions. Does this look like a perfect fit for me? I'm looking at them side by side. What is the most important thing to the employer, and does it reflect itself on the CV? Does the CV meet all the requirements that are in the job description? And if it doesn't, are there things in your history or in your skill set that can maybe compensate for that or overcome that, or maybe you can justify that? What's lacking or missing on your CV? Are there things that you have in your history, actually talents and skills that aren't currently on your CV, but you can put them on there to help match this job description? And how can you make your CV more attractive? What are some layouts and some formats? And actually, LinkedIn has a lot of tips and ideas and things like this. And of course, on the web, it has all kinds of stuff that you can find. And personally, I'm not a real good graphics person, so and layout is not one of my strong points. So when I actually looked at many different ideas, I looked at many different websites to give suggestions, and I picked one that I really liked and kind of went with it. And A really good one. Would you actually call yourself in for an interview based upon what the interview on your CV is? And if you don't want to answer that question, you could always ask a real close friend, hopefully they're a really close friend, and say, hey, would you hire me based on this CV and based on this job description? And that's really, really good feedback. And you can kind of, again, tailorize that CV to what you need it to be. And probably one of the biggest tips that I failed at first starting is making my CV too long. I have a long history of employment. I've been doing software development for over 20 years, and I just felt like I have so much experience, I got to put it all there so they can be really impressed at how well I do at everything. And in reality, when I did that, I got no contacts, no feedback. And so I literally spent one day, and I just cut out all the fat and made it really trim, slim, the things that focused on the positions that they wanted to. And I was amazed. I got all kinds of feedback and responses that way. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the fourth step is a cover letter. And this may seem maybe not as really important, but I actually found this to be the most important thing right up there with your CV, because this is the one place that you can talk to your company, to the company that could be a potential employer, and give them an idea of your personality, what kind of person you are, what kind of, just the way you think. And this is the only, CV is kind of dry, right? It's just like, facts, this is who I am, what I can do. But the cover letter actually gives a little bit of that personality back. So try to tailor the cover letter to each position that you're doing. And in the cover letter, try to emphasize things that are really important to the potential employer. Again, touch on key points. Make it interesting, make it fun. In my example, for my cover letter, I actually, we're going to get into my story in a few moments, but I actually gave that a little bit in the introduction about my story coming here and why I came here. And because one of the questions that I always get when I first get in an interview or even regular discussion is like, why am I here? Why did I come to Poland? Why did I come to Warszawa? Why? And so I try to answer that question because the story is kind of interesting and it's kind of different, I guess. So people like to hear that. So everybody has a really cool story and everybody has some really cool information about themselves. Put it in there, and then anything else in there, and just kind of apply it to the position. And again, seriously, just make it spicy. It's hard to go wrong in this area. And remember, the recruiter has looked at literally hundreds or thousands of cover letters, and you really want that to jump out because this is your dream job. This is exactly what you want. So show that passion inside of that cover letter. Next slide, please. And finally, and definitely probably the most importantly, is your state of mind. Getting a dream job is really, really hard work, and there's no way to say anything other than that. I mean, occasionally you get lucky, right? You have a friend, you can get into that position. But in reality, it is really, really a lot of hard work. So it can be very exhausting. And remember, rejection of getting your dream job is part of the process. And I'll go through that a little bit on my story a little bit. So if you're rejected, it's very normal. When I was looking for my dream job, I had a spreadsheet, and I kept track of every job that I applied for. And that spreadsheet was over 100 lines long before I actually got my real job. So I was rejected 100 times, close to that. So each time you get rejected, learn from it, redefine yourself, redefine what your role, maybe what your dream job is, or if it's the same, improve your CV, improve your cover letters, and just you'll get better, and it'll be fine. It can be a full-time job, depending on what you're doing. So again, it's just a lot of work, but remember, stay positive about it. It's really critical because it's so easy to get down on ourselves. We think about rejection. We think, nobody wants me. I really want this job. I really want to work in this industry, in this field, but I just can't. And it can be very, very, very much of a downer. But remember, stay positive. Remember all your successes. Remember to improve. You'll get there. I promise. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so these are very simple things I've talked about, things you've probably read before in many cases, and it's not rocket science, right? But I'm gonna kind of walk you through my experience of how I got my dream job, which is in game development, and kind of how I got started. And hopefully it'll be an encouragement to you and maybe have a few laughs along the way at my expense. It's all fine. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna come over here. This is actually the most important slide because this is me with hair, and it's back in about almost 20 years ago now at E3. And I'd like to point out the phone that I'm, it's displaying, my flip phone. I'm very proud of that back then. So I've always been a gamer, right? And I've always loved games. When I was a kid, I would make, pen and paper games because, well, we had computers back then, but well, actually we didn't. Or maybe the kind of computers you see here today, that I didn't work on back then. I was, of course, I grew up in Boston area. I went to college and I studied American history. Why, I don't know, but it seemed like a fun thing at the time. When I got out of school, of course, there was no jobs to do with American history, so that was kind of a bummer. And I really had no passion for doing anything with history, so I just started looking for employment, like many people would, who's just freshly out of college. Lucky for me, I got a job working for a software company in accounting, really sexy, and I worked on the support line. And so I would take calls from accountants and from people who couldn't get the numbers right, and I would take that information and go to our programmers and try to figure out an answer, and et cetera, et cetera. Kind of like we do today, except today is much more efficient. So that was my first connection with software. And then what was really cool about that job was that I got to talk to the programmers every day. And I quickly discovered that, hey, this is really cool. I mean, to be able to program, I can customize software that people use, and I want to write software that people can use. And then I got thinking, hey, I like games. Maybe I could write some games for this computer stuff. And so I went back to school and got some more training in computer science and programming, and I became feeling really powerful, right? I mean, if anybody who's a programmer here, you kind of got that sense of, hey, I can change this, I can do that, I can create this. So I decided, well, I can create my first game. And so I created my first game. Next slide, please. It looks like this, okay? And this is actually, this is today's version of the game, because I actually, when I first did this game, it looked nothing like this, and I don't have screenshots of that game. But what I did do is as I try new technologies, I always apply it to my first game, which is Yahtzee. It's just a simple dice game. This is actually working on the Android platform, because I wanted to know how to put a game on Android. But back then, we had no Unity engine. We had no Epic Game Engine. There was no Godot. It was not written in C++. And I knew nothing about those tools, and I was barely could program. But I really had a blast doing this. And this defined a little bit more about what I wanted for my dream job. Because I know I wanted, at this point, to work with games. And it was really, because I was having a blast. So as I learned more, I did a few more games. I did, just kind of, felt more strong and powerful. And one of my passions in life is to do simulations. I love simulations, and then more specifically, I like sports simulations. So in America, with baseball, it was my favorite sport at the time, and it still is kind of. I wanted to write a baseball sim. I thought that would be the ultimate cool thing. And there was no good baseball sims at the time, so I felt that the market needed my blessing upon a good baseball sim. Next slide, please. So I went to work for 3 years, and I came up with this. And which at the end, I kind of teamed up with a friend of mine to help me do a little bit of more of the advanced programming I couldn't do. And so we came up with this. We had beautiful graphics. We had fading. Remember, there's no game engines. This is not built off any game engine. There was no, it was just really, it was strictly Pascal, to be honest with you. And so we had fun doing it. It took us 3 years. We had a whole server back-end technology where the baseball season was very dynamic. And so as teams played in real life, we could readjust those cards and formulas to reflect it in our simulations. Oh, we were so proud of this. This was so awesome. So we said, this is going to make our money. We uploaded it to all the sites we could. We self-published it because, there wasn't a lot of publishers back then. We hit the go button, waited for $1 million to just drop in our hand. And what really happened was, next slide, please. We sold one copy, and it was to a British guy. It wasn't even to an American guy. And then we actually got sued for copyright infringement for over $500,000. That was a bad day, I can assure you. And in defending ourselves, we lost about $20,000, but we did win the lawsuit. It was frivolous, so I always take that away as a positive. But the whole experience could have been a real big downer, but that actually really defined to me what I wanted to do for my dream job. And that was I really wanted to work in the game industry because I had so much fun, and even though this was kind of a bummer, we can get over that. Next slide, please. Okay, so what did I do? Okay, I'm going to apply some of the things I talked about earlier. I started networking, and I started getting more serious and more focused and preparing about how to get into the gaming industry. So I started working, since I had done some design work and things, I got in contact with a TV show that was coming up, and I did some consulting with them. They're the ones who ultimately sent me to E3. I wrote multiple game design documents, tried to send them to people, anybody I knew to network. Again, I went to E3 in California. I went to game development conferences, both in the US and here in Europe. I worked with multiple different industries and different roles. Even if it wasn't in the gaming industry, I would try to work with industries and work with people with the tools that I would need in the game industry. And at the time, I was thinking more I'd be a programmer. But as I went through my career, I actually had the opportunity to start managing teams, software development teams, and I really, really enjoyed that. So I sort of redefined that, my dream job, to be more management. And all this time, the real big purpose of doing all this was to keep building that portfolio and building my confidence and to getting to the ultimate of my dream job. And again, in the aim, and that's kind of what happened. Next slide, please. Okay, one other thing. My CV. This is actually really important because I really messed up with this area. As I mentioned earlier, my CV was atrocious when I first started. Over time, I kept refining it. My LinkedIn page wasn't very attractive. It was too much noise. Nobody would come to it. I went on LinkedIn, took all the tips. I redefined that. I looked for different jobs that fit my skill set in the game industry. So when I really finally felt like I was ready, I started looking for jobs that was again, my skill set. And I was rejected by many companies, both here in the United States, and I actually was rejected by Huuuge first time, which is actually pretty funny. But that was early in my finding my process. And again, I didn't have my CV established. I didn't have my networking connections established. I didn't have many things. So I can understand why I was rejected today. But ultimately, I kept redefining, and I ultimately was contacted by Huuuge and went through that process. Next slide, please. So I did. I finally got my job. I was contacted by Huuuge Games. The recruiting team was fantastic. I can honestly say that it was the best recruiting experience that I've ever had. It kind of blew me out of the water. And it wasn't just a little bit better. It was over the top better. They were very helpful. They were very encouraging. They were very informative along the way. And so like I mentioned earlier, I applied. This is actually twice there. I got rejected my first time. I have the opportunity to manage a bunch of great developers, and we're having fun. We're building a new team right now. We build new products for one of the casino games and big new features into those, which is real exciting because we do something that actually our players touch each and every day, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to, when people pick up our games, wherever it is worldwide, they're doing something that I, in my team, had an influence on. So my challenge to you is to really keep pursuing your dream job. Define what it is in summary. Next slide, please. Yeah. Decide what your dream job is. Work to enhance the skills to match that job that you want. Keep updating your CV. It's an organic document. Update your LinkedIn profile as well. Create that cover page. Keep it spicy. Make it customized for each job that you want to apply for. Keep networking. Network. It really, I can't emphasize that enough. The more people you know, the more opportunities will become available for you. Remember, rejection is part of the process. So when you're rejected, it will happen. Embrace it, learn from it, and just move on to the next one. And just remember your state of mind. Be persistent, be positive, and never quit. So I encourage you again, if you have any questions, I will be at the booth, at our Huuuge booth. We have wonderful recruiters. If you want to know anything more about, we're doing a lot of hiring right now. So a little bit of plug for them. They're wonderful people. Again, I can't stress enough that my experience was amazing with them. So I encourage you to come out, check us out, check our games out, and thank you very much for your time.
Dziękujemy. To był Dill, Development Manager w Huuuge Games.